If the children are suffering and every week they're sitting by the window saying, where's daddy or where's mummy, and they're not here again, and that happens 3 or 4 times, this is a detriment to them. It's a detriment to their emotional well-being. And at that point, as a responsible parent, you need to step in and say, no more. Unless there's going to be consistency, no more.
Hi, welcome to the first episode of the Mo Charley Show. My name is Mo
Charley,
whereby we discuss many various topics, quite controversial topics, and just topics close to the heart. So the first one that we're discussing today is regarding breakups and divorce. So we'll get right to it. So one of the first questions that I'd like to ask you is, from a woman's perspective, how do women feel when they go through a breakup or a divorce?
Look, I think nowadays the whole topic of divorce has become so complicated because most of the time in a divorce you've got children involved. Mm-hmm. And I think that with the children involved, people get really confused with their own relationship, the husband and the wife, or the breakup and the children, and they combine everything in one. Yeah. So unfortunately, as human beings, we are inundated with emotion. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's really hard to pull the emotion away. Females, males carry emotions in a completely different way to each other. And I think that any woman deals with divorce with a very emotional point of view, and therefore the children get pulled in. It's very hard to pull the emotion out of it. And actually, when you go through a divorce, when you go through a breakup, when you're thinking about the children, you have to actually do it quite unemotionally. Because if you don't do it unemotionally, you are led by emotion. And we all know you can't lead your life by emotion. Mistakes happen. I don't know. What do you think?
Look, I think that just from my own personal experience and speaking to guys and girls that have gone through a divorce, one of the things that I've noticed is that you have women use kids as a means or a bargaining chip. Not all women, but a lot of women use children as a bargaining tool against the guy.
So do men, though.
Yeah, so do men. But because the children live with the woman, women tend to use the kids. If they're bitter towards the man, especially, they become angry and they use that as a means to stop allowing the children to see, or stop allowing the father to see their children. From your perspective as a woman, why do women do that?
Well, I think that nowadays you can't really say that just women do that.
No.
Because men do it as well. And actually, I think men can use emotion against women a lot. And they can use the emotion with children a lot. So although, yes, on an average basis, if you were to look at it, women use the children as a bargaining tool for financial reasons a lot of the time, which is really bad. And that's a reason why in the courts they are really particular about not having emotion of children and the finances into one case, and they keep it very separate because they know people use these as two big bargaining tools against each other. Okay. But I think that with women, they think that they're going to get pulling a man's heartstrings. What women need to understand is women aren't men, men aren't women, and you can't pull on a man's heartstrings like you can pull on a woman's heartstrings. And I think that's why women get really confused. It's taken me a long time to understand that and to see a lot of different women and men in their breakups and what they've gone through to understand that. But at the end of the day, the only people on the law of averages that lose out are the children.
Yeah.
Again and again and again and again and again, the kids lose out. And it doesn't matter where you're from, what walk of life, high class, low class, money, no money, whatever it is, the children always lose out. Because actually children don't know how much is in your bank. Yeah. They don't know whether daddy's paid mummy or mummy's paid dad. They don't care about that. What they care about is the fact, are you remembering my birthday? Are you taking me out? Am I having fun with you? Am I doing things with you? Do you kiss me goodnight? Are you there to look after me when I'm sick? Do you pick up the phone and you call me? That's what children care about. I think one of the really important things is when you go through a divorce, you've got to understand and you've got to separate the two and think, what is it I'm trying to get out of this? We've agreed to have a divorce. We've agreed to have this breakup. Maybe one party has agreed more than the other, but we have agreed to have this breakup. So if this breakup's agreed, then we have to structure it in such a way that we make it happen as clear cut as possible. Finances, our divorce, the woman and the man, and the children. It has to happen in two different ways because otherwise the kids just move out. And men and women end up becoming at loggerheads. And when you get lawyers involved, the lawyers are a catalyst for a complete train crash.
No, I agree. Look, going on from what you've just said, one of the things I can say from a man's perspective, which probably leads on to another separate topic, which is, what's your opinion on people that stay in relationships for the sake of the children, because there are lots of men out there that I know of. I don't speak to as many women, but there are lots of men out there who stay in relationships because they're worried about not seeing their children. And what I mean by that is this, which is, if you know that you're married to someone and you know that potentially there could be a case. I spoke to one of my friends recently and he said to me, look, one of the reasons why I don't want to get divorced, even though myself and her no longer get along, is because of the fact that I know that she's going to prevent me from being able to see my boy. And that's one of the biggest fears that he has. And for that reason, he's still in the relationship, even though he can't stand being in the relationship, not because there's anything particularly wrong with her, but he just feels like they're not a good suit for each other. So if we just open up that, how do you feel about people that's, it could be a man or it could be a woman, about them staying in a relationship for the sake of the kids, even though that they know that they're not right for each other?
It depends how tempestuous the relationship is. If you've got two people that are just friends and they are behaving as friends and they had a child and they know that they've built a friendship from that, then maybe that will work for a particular couple.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing that children can see in the world is love. Otherwise, we're going to live in a loveless world. And if the children are just seeing arguments all the time, or they're hearing them, even when you think they can't hear an argument, they can hear an argument.
Yeah.
Even if you think you're being quiet and you're not expressing yourself at all, and your children are upstairs and they're sleeping, they can hear that argument. They hear everything that's being said.
Yeah.
They're like wizards. They hear everything. And later on, that will come out. So it's up to you. Do you want to raise a child that is secure and well-grounded and understand that in life, sometimes people do break up, but they can work together and they can be good together, and that's how life is. And you give them the foundation blocks for what's going to happen in their life, not divorce, but relationships, whether it be work relationships, friendships, whatever it may be, you give them that building block.
Yeah.
Or you let them be in a tempestuous relationship and they grow up and they're completely insecure. They have failed relationships after that, because then they'll go and be in a relationship that's failing and not good. You have to leave the relationship, and you don't do things for the sake of the children. You have to separate children from the relationship.
Yeah.
And women or men mustn't use children as a bargaining tool. They're not pawns. It's not a game. This isn't a child's life is not a game that you're playing with. It's a real human being, and they grow up and they become adults. And those are the adults that are going to shape the world. And if you bring in these adults that are totally, what did the child do to deserve not having their mum or their dad there? That's not fair. They didn't make that choice. Because a mum and a dad decide, or two people, a woman and a woman, or a man and a man, whatever it may be, decide to break up, that's not the choice of the child. So the child then shouldn't have their own choices taken away from them, because what you're doing is taking a child's choice away from them. You're taking away their voice. You're taking away their right to speak. You're taking away their right to think. You're taking that away from them. You're silencing them. And that's not fair.
Okay,
Yeah.
So leading on from that, right, another question. Yeah. One of the things that guys think, especially when you're fathers, is if I'm in a relationship whereby I know that it's not working, but I've got children, one of the biggest fears that I have, aside from being with her anymore, is that my children are going to grow up screwed up if they grow up in a single parent household. Going on from what you've just said, if you're in a relationship whereby you know that it's not working, and it's better that you're, separated, so that in order for the kids to grow up more stable, do you think that kids can grow up in a single parent household and not turn out screwed up?
100%.
So as to say.
100%.
And being stable.
Yeah, I've had children myself in a single parent household, and my children are not screwed up. They're very grounded. But they're grounded because I take my ideology of raising my children was from the point of view that if a father wants to be there and wants to be there with regular contact and sticks to when they're going to, consistency is the key here. If you're not going to be consistent, then you remove the inconsistency and you have a grounded child. A child is not grounded because they have inconsistency in their life. Even if they have a mother and a father at home and the dad's constantly working, the child will grow up with a memory of my dad was constantly working, or we were raised by nannies, or, that still is inconsistency. So whether the mother and the father are still together or not, that's still inconsistency. They need consistency. So whether it's in a single parent household or not, as long as they have consistency, because what does consistency give? It gives security.
Yeah.
What does security give? It gives reassurance. Then that child is secure.
Absolutely.
That's how you get security. That's how a child feels secure in themselves. They don't need to know that both the parents are, with them every second of the day for breakfast, lunch and dinner. They don't need to know that. But they need to know that dad is turning up every Saturday or every 2 Saturdays and mum is here whatever they need to know. They need to know when it's happening. It's like a nursery. You don't say, or a school, you don't creep away and leave your child there to cry and think, oh, where's mummy gone? Or where's daddy gone? Mm-hmm. You say, goodbye, I'm going now. Even if they're crying, you say goodbye and you go, because then they know you're coming back. But it's the same thing when it comes to relationships. No relationship should be a such where they can hear parents arguing all the time. And women need to stop using, because on the whole it is women, they need to stop using children as a bargaining chip. Because the more you use a child as a bargaining chip, I'm telling you now, the other party will pull back. They'll pull back, and all the finances you may have been thinking that you deserve or you want, the house you might want, the car you think you deserve, all these things that you think you deserve will get pulled back. They won't even be entertained, because what you're doing is you're stripping somebody of their children. You're stripping them of that emotion that they have within them. And if you strip someone of their emotion and you take them to that emotional state, you're taking somebody to a place where they're not thinking straight, because you've hurt them. And human beings, when they're hurt, act irrationally. So if you want somebody to act with rationale, you have to treat them with the respect they deserve. 2 people had a child, 2 people made the child happen, and you have to make sure that the other person is heard, and the product of the 2 of you, because once upon a time it was good, or something was there for you to even have the child to begin with, the product of the 2 of you doesn't suffer, because you both now don't get on. You've had your life, you've had your childhood, you've had that time. And whether your childhood was good or it was bad, if it was good, you want your children to have a good childhood. If it was bad, you don't want to ever repeat that for your kids, because you love them. So why would you want them to have a bad childhood? Why would you want them to have bad memories? They deserve to have the best you were a child once. We're on this earth for 80 years, if we are lucky. Why would you take the first 20 years of that person's life and make it and ruin it? If you love them, why would you do that? And then they've got to spend the next 20 years up until they're 40 to try and now rectify and figure out why it was so bad in those first early years. Why do I feel insecure? Why do I have all of these problems? They've then got to go figure that out. So when do they start living? At 40? What, because you got divorced? Because you couldn't figure out your relationship? That's not fair. That's not fair on anybody. So I've got a question for you.
Please.
You have been through a divorce.
Yeah.
You've also been through a situation where the mother of your children stopped you seeing your children.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Horrible. And the reason why I felt horrible is because, just from my own personal experience, the same question that I asked you is, I'm asking you on behalf of myself and probably on behalf of lots of men that I know who have said exactly the same thing, which is, when you're in a relationship whereby the relationship becomes tempestuous to the point whereby you know that the way you're behaving in front of each other is not good in front of the kids. Because I didn't want my kids to pick up on our arguments, our disagreements, when we weren't getting along. And then you have a fear that you're never going to see your kids again. So what you end up doing is you end up staying in the relationship. And then what you will also end up doing is you end up thinking to yourself in the back of your mind, and I know that there are many viewers out there who will resonate with this, if there are men out there who are going through this, which is, what's going to happen? And I know I don't want to sound completely capitalist or materialistic. What's going to happen with my finances if we go for a separation? And the reason why I say this is because you've spent your whole entire life building yourself and working hard for where it is that you've got to. And then, once you get a separation or once you have a divorce, unless she's a higher earner than you, you're most likely going to have to give 50% of everything that you've ever worked hard for away to her.
Or to the courts. And
or to the courts. And the amount of money that you spend in lawyers' fees, solicitors' fees and everything else as well, that's basically a chunk of everything that you've ever worked hard for. On top of the fact that you're not going to see your kids. On top of the fact that she may end up meeting someone else and you may end up paying for her lifestyle, what have you, in order to keep her sweet and happy, for her not to come back bitter after you. How many people have we spoken to whereby the guy was just like, you know what, just give her the house, just for for the sake of peace. And there's a saying that someone said to me a long time ago, and if you're watching out there, you'll know who you are, which is, smart rich men out there don't get divorced.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because if you are worth a lot of money then you're going to have to give her 50% of that.
Yeah, but even if you're not worth a lot of money, listen, it's all relative, isn't it? 50% of £100,
whatever it is that you have,
of £1 million, it's all relative to what you're earning and what you have.
It's still 50%.
It's still,
But coming back to what you said to me, I think the biggest fear and the biggest hurt and pain that you have is when you are not able to see your children, because they're your children. You love your children. I can understand why. I can't believe I'm going to say this now, because I was completely the opposite to this a while back, but I'm not at this place yet. Hopefully I never get to this place, but I can understand why some men get to a point in a relationship where the woman makes it so difficult for them to see the children, where they just think, you know what, forget it, keep the kids. Because when you push someone to such a point whereby you are exhausting every emotion and everything you have, and let me make this very clear to the viewers out there, even if men do not show their emotions and women show their emotions more, men have emotions. And the emotions that men have are, men feel hurt, men feel upset, men feel deceived, men feel betrayed by many different things that their partners can do to them. But the way in which a man shows that is completely different, or maybe completely different to how a woman shows that or somebody else may show that. But men still feel exactly the same pain. You've seen it yourself.
No, I have. I have seen it.
Waking up. The two emotions that most men have, or I have, is you either cry or get upset, or you get angry. Yeah, those are the only two pathways that you have. And 99% of the time, most men don't want to cry because it makes you look unmanly, even though it's not. So what you end up doing is you end up getting angry. You end up getting moody. You end up not knowing where to go. You just become frustrated, which is why a lot of men out there, what they end up doing is they end up doing crazy, stupid things. Thank God I didn't do any of those things, but you need something to ground you in order for you not to do those things. But I can understand why lots of men out there, become completely lost. So to summarize what you've just asked me in terms of your question, it can drive you crazy. Not being able to see your kids can drive you crazy. Not knowing when you're going to see your kids can drive you crazy. You have to reach a certain level of mental armory within your head whereby everything is in line so that you don't end up going crazy. And I think, look, leading on from that, I can understand why there are men out there that don't get divorced in relationships, because they're too scared to go through that. I mean, just from my perspective, just going through the courts and the legal system, I'm alien to this stuff. I know you've got a background in law, but I'm alien to this stuff. I'm from a medical background, and having to go into, having to face lawyers, having to receive that email from solicitors, it's petrifying. When you receive that email from a solicitor from her side, it's, you get a sinking feeling in the bottom of your stomach, because I'm trying to get on with my life here and trying to be happy, and I'm having to deal with this. On top of that, you're coming after me and I'm going to have to pay for this. On top of that, I'm going to have to respond in jargon and in wording that I don't even understand coming from the letters. Half the letters that I received, I got you to read it because I didn't understand it. So that's one element to it. The other element to it as well is being on your own and having to deal with all the thoughts that you're having on your own. Thoughts such as, I'm not seeing my kids are going to grow up, my kids are going to think that I never made an effort to see them, and they're going to blame me. The whole thing about my kids growing up and then my daughter coming back to me and saying, Daddy, I was growing up, where were you? Yeah, all of these questions men ask themselves. If you care, and I'll tell you something, men do care. They're your kids, they're your blood. You care. I'll do anything for my kids, but not being able to see them, not having access to them,
that's you though. You care. And yes, there is a huge percentage of men that do care, but there's also a huge percentage of men that don't.
Absolutely.
And, at the end of the day, it takes two to tango. At the end of the day, two people made a child. And there are men that do care. There are men that don't care. But if I can give any advice at all, and I'm looking at it from a female's point of view and a male's point of view, for guys, my advice would be, and I've got a older daughter, and I've been through this. I've been through that. I've messed up. I know the correct way now. I have been on the other receiving end of a husband that's gone through a divorce and trying to find peace with his ex-wife and my stepchildren, on top of, trying to navigate my own children. I've kind of seen every angle that you can see in these sorts of situations. Now, with men, I think that you have to be understanding to the point that women have emotion and women can't just on the whole, this is a generalization. Women can't just pick up and drop the children and say, oh, I'm going out today, or I'm going to go and do, play golf or whatever I'm going to do, and just leave. Women don't get to do that. So what happens is when you have a divorce or when you have a breakup, a man might go and deal with his emotion in other ways. A woman has to deal with that emotion with the children. When you're dealing with that emotion and you're dealing with the emotion of having children as well, that can be really tough because you've got little people that you're trying to put your energy into. You're hurt and you're emotionally not thinking properly because your emotions are now taking over and you're being led by hurt, you're being led by emotion, plus you're having to give love and care and show that you're not. You don't want to go push your kids on the swing when your heart feels broken. And nobody goes through breakup and doesn't feel broken at all, otherwise you'd be a complete robot. So guys just need to be a little bit more sympathetic to the fact that a woman does go through that. I understand that there are many different reasons why people go through their breakups, and going through the breakup, you have someone might have cheated, someone might have, you don't really know what the reason is that that's happened in a relationship. The woman might have cheated, the man might have cheated. You don't know. So you don't know what anger has come before the emotion. So you might have to simmer down the anger and then deal with the emotion. But in any case, when it comes to the children, please try and put the anger in a box, deal with the anger in a box with that person, even if you don't speak to them anymore and you say, I don't want to talk to you. Okay, but make a hotline. And if it's something to do with the children, like a Batman line, that red buzzer goes, it's the kids. You've got to answer the phone or you've got to do something. And stick to a routine. So if you say you're going to see the children every Saturday, every 2 weeks, whatever it may be, whatever you can do, then do it and stick to it. Now, from a female's point of view, with ladies, you have got to stop if you are blocking contact. It's not yours to block. It's not your God-given right because you gave birth to these children to block contact. Now, fathers of my children watching this saying, you block contact. Blocking contact is saying you will not see your children. For no reason at all, you will not see your children. You will not see your children because you haven't given me any money. You'll not see your children because I don't like you today. You will not see your children. That is not a reason to block contact. You can block contact, I believe, but this is my opinion, if the father or the other partner turns around and says, I'm going to be there on Saturday, doesn't turn up. If they do that 3 or 4 times in a row, block contact until they are ready to give you a consistent contact time where they don't let your children down. The reason I said you could block contact at that point, which I know I'm going to get some comments saying you should never block contact, but the reason I'm saying that is because it's the best interest of the children. If the children are suffering and every week they're sitting by the window saying, where's daddy or where's mummy, and they're not here again, and that happens 3 or 4 times, this is a detriment to them. It's a detriment to their emotional well-being. And at that point, as a responsible parent, you need to step in and say no more. Unless there's going to be consistency, no more. But that's the only reason. You have no right, as women, we have no right, just because we have given birth, I've done it 4 times, I have no right. My children are their own people, they're their own person. I have no right to block contact. The only reason that you would block it is from the reason I've said. Otherwise, you have to let, as hard as it may be, as hard as your emotion might be, as hard as he might not be or she might not be paying what you want or whatever, this isn't a reason to block contact. A child needs both its parents. A child also needs its grandparents. A child needs love. There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. It's a really true saying. And in England, one of the big things is people are often left alone to raise a child, and that's very lonely. And it doesn't take one person, because just your knowledge is not what that child needs. This child needs the knowledge from many. It needs the wisdom from the grandparents. It needs aunties, uncles. It needs to have all the love around them to grow into human beings that we want to see. So really, if you are blocking contact, try and stop blocking contact. And before you go to lawyers, before you go to the courts, I really think it's try and find somebody that can mediate with you. Even if you can't find somebody that you know, then find a person who can step in as a legal mediator is what I meant. Because you'll find just from mediation, you will listen to each other. And the hardest thing about a breakup is wanting to listen. You don't want to listen because you're so hurt. Again, that emotion of hurt has come before everything else. So you've got the anger, all these emotions, that if we can get rid of these emotions, you'll then be able to go onto an equilibrium that you can both communicate on. Because don't forget, this is a communication level here. And often in a breakup, one person's here, one person's here. So if you're both trying to communicate here, how are you possibly going to make sense with each other? But the children are sitting on the equilibrium. That's where they're sitting. But mummy's here, daddy's here, mummy's here, and you're fighting and you're battling. Who's in the middle? The kids are in the middle. And that's where all the problems come from.
Charlie's given her commentary on some advice. I'm going to give you mine. So one of the advices that I'd give for women out there, just from a man's perspective, is to just take into account when you're going through a breakup, the most important thing, and a lot of the things I'm going to say are in agreement with her, but just to add to it, is the kids come first. So part and parcel of that is, please, when you're going through a breakup or you're going through a divorce or you're going through any sort of separation with each other and you've got, the kids are involved, do not say anything bad or tell any lies about the other side. And the reason why I say that is because just from a man's perspective, the moment a woman comes out there, and I'm not blaming women because men do it too, the moment you come out and you say anything bad about your partner, especially if you're going through legal proceedings or financial proceedings, what it ends up doing is ultimately, pardon my French, it ends up pissing the other person off. And then what ends up happening is you both end up on two completely different mediums. So the moment you end up upsetting the other person by making up lies or making up any false allegations against them, is they end up going on the back foot. And just like if you go into a fight and somebody came up to you and pushed you in the street, even if you're not the fighting type of person, you want to fight back. And you are going to fight back because that's your animal instinct of how you protect yourself. So when you come to a man and you make allegations about him, what he ends up doing is he ends up thinking, before, I was going to speak to you on this level, but now that you've stooped this low, you have to fight fire with fire, and I'm not going to allow you to do this. And it doesn't mean he's going to do the same thing back or say anything horrible back to you, but he's going to do everything he can in order to protect himself. And sometimes, in worst case scenarios, he may end up saying something about you, which either may be true or may not be true. And that's what ends up happening. It becomes a war. And then you end up losing yourself over the children. So my advice at this point is, if you are going to go through a separation, or you are going to go through a divorce, or you're both going to separate or split, always take the kids into account, whether you have kids or you don't have kids. Because that in itself, when you end up insulting each other and making up lies about each other, and you get the courts involved about each other, saying he has done this, or he's taken this, or these are his habits, you end up annoying him, and you end up, or annoying her. And then you end up on two completely different levels. You're not able to discuss or to speak with cool heads, and you just end up very, very angry with each other.
Can I just cut in for 1 second? There's also something else to think about, is when you're in that situation where you're name calling and all this stuff's happening.
Yeah.
Although lawyers will turn around and they'll say, oh no, you can't say this and you can't do that, they love it. Mm-hmm. And the reason they love it is because for that hour of name calling, they've just earned £1,000.
Of course they have.
So every time the name calling is happening and you're doing this name calling, you're putting money in their pockets. So you're funding someone else's lifestyle by having an argument. That's what you have to understand. Getting lawyers involved in a divorce, you have ruined your relationship. If you have to get lawyers involved, understand your relationship is completely finished. And if you've got young children, you've got to have a relationship with this person somehow, some way, for the next 18 years minimum. Mm. And if you have a lawyer involved, you have ruined that relationship, because lawyers will come in with a magic wand of hellfire and rain it over all of you. And that will cause a problem. Lawyers do not care who your children are. As hard as that may be to understand, as much as you might think that a lawyer is great and they're wonderful and they call me and they check if I'm okay, they don't care. They're calling to check if you're okay because you're funding their pocket. You're the reason they go home to their £3 million house. That's the reason that they're calling to check that you're okay. And at night, I guarantee you, they do not know the names of your children. So when people get, lawyers involved and they think, I'm going to win this battle, I'm going to battle this person today, I'm going into court, I've got my barrister and my solicitor and whatever, that barrister and solicitor have to look at the notes to see what the name of your children are before you go into court. They don't care. You care. No one cares more about your children than the two people sitting there. So if you really do care, and you care about the fact that you did get married one day, you did have something, you did have a relationship, and every new partner that comes in has to understand they did have a relationship one day. It wasn't terrible from day one, and that has to be respected. That from that angle, you have to try and find some sort of equilibrium. And I will once again, I'm going to re-go over. Your children sit on the balanced level. One of you are here and one of you are here. If you are tugging at war, the children are the ones that are really not benefiting from this. And it's really detrimental to them. The same thing if you go with lawyers, how much money are you spending in court? Because some divorces can cost you £250,000 by the time you've finished 4 years later doing all of this. And that could have paid for all their schooling, it could pay for your children, it could do anything, and all because you couldn't figure out the emotion between the two of you.
Do you think people can go through a divorce in an amicable way?
Yes, 100%.
No, I've heard about this and I've seen this as well on TV, which is when two parents go through a divorce, they end up becoming friends later and they end up going out for dinner with the kids. And that's absolutely fine. Whereas the divorces that I've seen, or the ones that I've come across, most of them, they just end up going at loggerheads. So, the take-home message from this is not to say that, we've spoken about many different topics, but can two people be completely amicable going through a separation if they realize that they're not suited for each other?
You've just hit a nail that in Europe or in other countries, divorce can be a little bit more amicable.
Yeah.
English people don't like children. England is not a child-friendly country. Everybody knows that. You go to a restaurant in Spain or you go to a restaurant somewhere else and your kid's playing up. The waiter comes along, oh, why are you being silly? But, everyone gets involved. You go to a restaurant in England and people look at you like, oh, God. And it's like, well, you're not a child once. Did you not have children? You were also a child. You must have children in your family. English people don't like children on a whole. So when you've now got English lawyers getting involved, they don't care. It's money. This is all a money game. They have a job. Yeah. It's money. We have a job. We run a clinic. It's money. And their job is money. But the problem is their job with money is ruining people's lives. Some lawyers, some barristers, some solicitors are great. And they really want to try and mediate the situation so that you don't have so much animosity between two people. But when you've got partners who are running with crazy dreams of, I want a £2 million house with a partner that's earning, I'm just pulling something out of the bag here, but a partner that's earning £30,000 a year. I want to have my kids in schooling. The partner's still earning £30,000 a year. What are they expecting? And a lawyer's saying, yeah, okay, I'll try and get that for you. With what? How? Because when it gets to the final hearing and the judge says, why is this even in front of me? This isn't even a case. There's nothing even here. You've just wasted so much time, so much emotion, so much time with the kids going through bullshit that you end up being, as I said to the beginning, at loggerheads and not on an equilibrium. And that's what it all boils down to. It all comes down to that. And listen, emotion is horrible, and emotion can bring us to do the most stupid things, say the most stupid things. People fight, they react rather than respond. People react because of emotion. They don't respond because of emotion. They react because of emotion. So if you can learn to step back and respond to somebody and think to yourself, okay, is this person also hurting? Why is this person saying the things they're saying? Why is this happening? You can maybe try and get on some sort of a leveling ground. But in any case, regardless of how you do it, lawyers are not the way forward, because unless you've got a really good mediating lawyer who can still find some sort of friendship between you. But separating children and causing I've heard of families that separate the kids. The girls go with one, the boys go with another. I mean, what is that all about? Yeah, how can you do that? How can you separate your children? You never loved your children, that you can separate your children. It's ridiculous. So I keep going back to the equilibrium thing. You cannot be at tug of war and leave your children here, because those kids are not going to suffer for the first 5, 6, 7, 10 years of their life, or whatever it is when they are. They're going to suffer for the rest of their lives because they're not going to understand how to have a relationship. They're going to suffer from rejection. When I did my NLP life coaching course, one of the biggest things that I was taught is rejection is the core to a lot of people's mental health problems. Rejection. And when people go through divorce, you're just spewing rejection all over a child because they don't understand. and they don't understand why mummy and daddy are fighting. Was it me? Did I do something? Have I done something wrong? They don't get it. And when you separate the children, when you separate them from one parent, they think, is it me? Rejection. And, that's the communication of that it's got to be paramount. It has to be the most important thing.
Okay, so when you're going through a divorce, what would you say is one of the ways of, and I'm sure most people have this question, what would you say is one of the best ways to manage the children when you're going for a separation in order to make sure that they're not damaged?
Consistency. It's just consistency. You have an arrangement, and the first question that should be is, okay, we've agreed to break up.
Yeah.
Fine. Question number 1, what happens with the children? When you've decided what happens with the children, you stick to it. Because all these different balls are going to get thrown of resentment, of anger, of you did this, you did that. All these different lies are going to come out. All these things are going to come out because the reason you're getting divorced is there's unhappiness coming from somewhere. And all these signs that were coming from a long time ago suddenly become, oh, wow, okay, I saw that. I didn't see that coming. That's all going to become. But if you have that rock solid, this is what happened to the children, and that's the one thing you don't come off of. No matter how much you learn to hate each other, you stick to the rules of the kids, the consistency. That's got to be number 1. That's got to be the first thing that's sorted. And then after that, you figure out how the divorce is going to happen, the finances, the this, the that, whatever. But this one never changes. What happens with those children never changes.
And alongside that, you're not allowed to say anything bad about your ex-partner.
But that should just go. I mean, why would you say something bad to a child anyway? Why would you hide the bad things in this world from children?
Yeah, I agree.
The amount of times you need to cover your kids' eyes and turn them around in this horrible world that we live in. You hide bad things. You don't make your children part of that. Okay.
So the take-home message is not to say that everyone out there should go and get divorced, but is to say that divorces can be amicable. Don't make kids the pawns in your breakup. Try and mediate on an understanding and a level. These are the type of topics that we're going to be discussing in the next few podcasts. And if there's anything else you want to say?
I think the most important thing is that we are two people that we own a business together, and we are married. We have our own family. We are a blended family, and we've got a lot of knowledge in certain things. Not everything's, it's our opinion at the end of the day. But if there are any questions or anything topics you'd like to be spoken about, then please give us a comment. If it's something that you don't want to leave your name with, you can send us a message. And we'll be happy to discuss any topic, really. But we just want to discuss topics that are real. We have no filter, so we are happy to talk about...
And we don't agree all the time.
No, we definitely don't agree all the time, but we'll be happy to talk about most things. So, yeah, let's keep the questions coming and let's keep working together. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and I will see you in the next video we have. Take care.
Thank you.